Chris. How you doing on this Thursday?
I'm doing great, Travis. How are you?
We cannot complain over here, my man. Wanted to get with you on a number of topics. And let's start right at the top. We've teased this throughout the first segment or so of the program. You recently went inside Jake Fromm, kind of as both an NFL prospect, but then in encapsulating what he's accomplished, what he's done in his first 2 years, pretty much 2 full seasons as a starter there for the Georgia Bulldogs behind center. And I thought you made a really interesting comparison or a comp for Jake Fromm. And it was an Alabama quarterback. And I don't know if many people would have gone this route or thought of this guy in relation to Jake Fromm, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I know Alabama fans are quite familiar with Jake Fromm, even going back to his time as a recruit. And statistically and just from a physical profile, he looks a lot like A.J. McCarron. They obviously share a ton of similarities. Their statistics line up almost exactly based on their second-year starting experience. Both threw for around 2,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, don't turn the ball over much, completed around 67% of their passes. But it goes farther than that. I think both kind of unfairly have been game managers throughout their career. Both won a ton early in their career. McCarron was 22-4 his first 2 seasons as a starter. Fromm was 23-5. I know McCarron has a national championship on his resume a little earlier than Jake does, and Jake is still working towards that. But they both played for a national championship at a super young age, and they were both on teams where they were kind of put in a position to manage maybe more than win. But I also think both probably won more than they managed in a lot of ways, and people just kind of made assumptions about both quarterbacks based on the talent around them. And when you throw in the fact that both are like 6'2 or 6'3, both are right around 220 pounds, it's kind of an eerily similar profile for both quarterbacks.
You know, it is, and I'll say this, looking back to 2012 with AJ, really benefited from the arrival of Amari Cooper, who absolutely blew up over the second half of that 2012 season. Looking at Fromm for 2019, he's losing, I guess, Riley Ridley outside, losing Mecole Hardman, losing Isaac Nauta at the tight end position. In some ways, could this be an opportunity for Jake Fromm to validate himself beyond what we've already seen in terms of what he'll have to work with at the wide receiver position? I know they returned the Georgia does Holloman, I believe. Demetrius Robertson will be counted on, the former Cal player. Will Fromm be asked to carry more? Will he be the guy that will be looked to make guys around him better, or we've already seen that from him?
I think we've already seen a lot of that from Jake. I know he's had some really bad games and pretty big situations. The second half of Alabama in the national championship comes to mind. The game against LSU last year, he was atrocious. But, other than that, I think you've actually seen him make players better. He's extremely accurate in terms of the intermediate routes. He reads the field really well. He usually puts the ball in the right place. And I think Georgia's receivers really benefited from that this year. But he's going, as most people who follow college football know, when a player is in a system for 3 years, especially at quarterback, they get more comfortable and more familiar with it. I know Georgia went through an offensive coordinator change, but the system itself isn't going to shift much. Jake is super comfortable there, and he's still got plenty of talent on the outside. The Demetrius Robinson, I believe, was the number 1 receiver in the 2017 class. I know he didn't catch many balls last year. Holloman is somebody you can really count on, and they certainly have some young freshmen and sophomores out there that can make an impact. But yeah, I think this is certainly a year where you're going to see Jake maybe take on a bit more of the star QB role. He might throw a little bit more. He might have a little more responsibility. But either way, I think he's going to continue to be one of the most efficient and one of the most effective quarterbacks in college football.
And I know what else he's going to have. You know this too. He's going to have a hellacious offensive line and some backs that he can still hand the football to. And it's kind of interesting. If I asked you today, which combination would you take? Alabama's combination of returning offensive line and backs, or would you go with Georgia from that standpoint?
I mean, that's a tough question. You could argue they're probably 1 or 2 or 1 and 3 in the country. But But I lean towards Georgia's offensive line and back. I'm as big of a Najee Harris fan as you'll find in the country, but I think Georgia's stable of backs is a little deeper right now, at least in terms of proven entities. I'm a huge DeAndre Swift fan. And they've even got like a guy like Zamir White coming off of an ACL tear who's going to contribute, and a guy like Cook who can kind of contribute in an all-purpose role. And then that offensive line is just nasty at Georgia. They're huge. They move unlike most linemen their size. Andrew Thomas, their left tackle, is as good of an offensive lineman you'll find in college football this season. He's going to be a top 10 pick most likely. Everybody else on that line is going to come in with at least like 6 or 7 games starting experience at the worst. So I probably lean towards Georgia in the trenches and a running back by the slimmest of margins.
Yeah, when I look at Jake Fromm, I can get the A.J. McCarron comparison, but I even go back to guys like Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, who were sort of conjoined when they came out of NC State and Ole Miss, respectively. As you said, really good accuracy, probably anticipation is at such a level that it makes up for what is at least perceived to be some deficiencies, maybe from an arm talent standpoint. If Jake Fromm comes out following the 2019 season, and I'm not convinced that'll happen, even if he gets a first-round grade, I still think he could be one of these guys like Eli or Tim Tebow. Jake Fromm doesn't have to come out after his third year. Where would you see Jake Fromm in a 2020 draft type setting? Is in your opinion, is he a slam dunk first rounder? Does he have some work to do?
Yeah, and to your point about Jake might not come out, he is about as big of a Georgia fan or a Georgia homer that you're going to find. Like that.
He's Georgia's Tebow. Yeah, from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. And I can easily see him coming back. But in terms of his evaluation, I don't know if he's a first-round lock necessarily. I think some of these mock drafts have gotten a little aggressive with the numbers. At the end of the day, he is still a 6'2" quarterback with arm strength that you don't necessarily love, especially to the third level of the field. And he's not as mobile as some of the shorter quarterbacks that we've seen. Jake can obviously move within the pocket and he can kind of create plays with his feet to create throwing lanes. But I don't think he's certainly not to the level of a Russell Wilson or even close to what Kyler Murray was a year ago. But I think in this day and age when quarterbacks are put at a premium, especially young quarterbacks who don't cost as much, I think Jake is a fringe first-round guy just because of the intangibles, the way, as you said, he anticipates and sees the field. And I think you can really do a lot with a quarterback of his kind of talent in a short amount of time and kind of controlling your cap in that way. I wouldn't necessarily put him in the top 10. I think the top of that board is pretty easily Tua and Justin Herbert right now, with some other guys maybe sneaking into that conversation. But I can see him going at the back of the first round or kind of early in the second. But he could also change that conversation with a great junior year.
What about the guy Jake Fromm replaced? Are we not talking enough about Jacob Eason going into year one back home out there at the University of Washington?
I just think as a college football group, we don't talk enough about West Coast teams in general. But
it's still yesterday there. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jacob Eason could have a huge year. I'm going to be honest, from what I've heard out of that situation, he didn't necessarily have the best camp, or at least spring ball. That is a little bit of a quarterback race going into the fall. I would still fully expect Jacob Eason to win that job, and given the talent around him, especially along that offensive front, and Washington's got a really strong one this year. I think he's going to be very good, and he's still the statuesque kind of quarterback prototype that NFL teams love to see. He's got probably the best arm in this class. He can really sling it. And if Jacob Eason has a great year, not only will Washington be in contention for the college football playoff, but he is a potential first-round pick as well, given his profile.
Yeah, from the land of the Bledsoe and Hewards, he's a good fit out there in Washington State. Hey, we're talking with Chris Hummer, national college football writer for 247sports.com on Southern Fried Sports, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier. What's up with Baker Mayfield now, Chris? This guy, he wakes up in the morning looking to go at people. Sam Ehlinger in Texas? Is this more about Sam Ehlinger, the Texas quarterback, that you think Baker Mayfield has an issue with? Or is this just a deep-seated sort of thing with the school 15, 20 minutes from his house that didn't recruit him out of high school, and that being, of course, the University of Texas?
I think it's even pettier for Baker. So Baker played at Lake Travis High School, and Sam is a Westlake guy, and those are crosstown rivals in Austin. And both schools have produced a lot of great quarterbacks. I know Baker threw some shade at Sam for not being Drew Brees and Nick Foles. Pretty lofty comparison. I don't think many people are those two quarterbacks. And then Baker's high school has produced, I think, like 8 Division I quarterbacks in a row. I'm not exaggerating. Matthew Baldwin came out of Lake Travis. Charlie Brewer, Baylor starting quarterback, came out of Lake Travis. Matthew Brewer, a former Virginia Tech starter, came out of Lake Travis. You can kind of go on and on for a while. And those two schools don't like each other much. Baker, as we know, kind of uses anything possible for motivation, and he doesn't really let flights go. I think Sam might have said something about Baker last year that kind of probably irked Baker a bit. And I think part of what makes Baker Mayfield great, and part of why I love to follow him personally, is the kind of the pettiness and his unwillingness to let things go. And I think this is just one of those situations. He still has high school beef, and I think I can actually really appreciate that. At least he's upfront about it.
I mean, in terms of Red River rivalries, and they're always anticipated, even if the teams aren't great. But this one coming up, Chris, I mean, where's it going to rank with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma and Ellinger and the expectations for Texas? It's going to be incredible by the time that game rolls around.
Oh, it'll be great, and this will be the first time, likely. Let's assume Texas gets past LSU, or Texas plays LSU close, and they're still a top 25 team. This could be the first time their top 10 teams meeting since 2012. It's been a really long time since this game mattered at a really high level to both programs, with both programs potentially being in the national title picture. We haven't seen that in probably almost a decade, and it's going to matter a lot. Between those two quarterbacks, I don't know if it's necessarily that big of a deal. Sam Ellinger, quite famously, walked off the field last year and told Kyler Murray to take his L. So I don't think it's going to be as contentious as that. But, it's going to be heated, and Tom Herman and Lincoln Riley have really reinvigorated this rivalry. And in my opinion, when that rivalry is right, there's nothing better in college sports than that at the Cotton Bowl. So it should be a lot of fun.
You got to go back to Mack and Stoops, for where this thing should be anyway. For 2019 and the next few years, it appears. And speaking of the next few years, Lincoln Riley continues to just stack players at the quarterback position. If he needs a 1-year stopgap, he goes out and gets a guy like Jalen Hurts. But he's also recruited some very good players on the high school level last year. This most recent class, I believe it was Spencer Rattler. And now it looks like he's gone out for 2021, even that far ahead, and gotten perhaps the number 1 quarterback in the country for the 2021 class in Brock Vandergriff from neighboring Georgia, of all places. I saw that you used the word dynasty to describe what Lincoln Riley is building or has built at the quarterback position. Can you compare it to anything we've seen in recent years, just at that one spot?
Maybe I'm not looking at history with the right perspective, but I would have a hard time pinpointing a program that's had the level of quarterback that Oklahoma has and is currently recruiting. When you think about it, legitimately, so Oklahoma is going to probably go from Baker Mayfield, Heisman winner, Kyler Murray, Heisman winner, Jalen Hurts, national champion, potential Heisman winner, Spencer Rattler, the number 1 overall quarterback in the country in the 2019 class, and then Brock Vandergriff, awesome quarterback name, by the way, just great. And then in the 2021 class, and that is showing zero signs of slowing down. And I think in that way, it's a little unprecedented. I think Clemson, at least recently, might have an argument when you go from Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, to DJ. I won't insult him by trying to pronounce his name, but the number 1 pro-style quarterback in the 2020 class, who's from California. That is kind of comparable. But in terms of what Lincoln Riley is doing at the quarterback position and almost back-to-back years, pretty unprecedented in my opinion.
Yeah, to say the least. And it looks like really when you talk blue bloods in general, right? The rich just keep getting richer. Now, Alabama has had this stretch of Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, potentially Talia Tagovailoa if it's not Mac Jones, continues to recruit at a very high level, trying to nab Bryce Young for the 2020 class from Southern Cal. So when you look at Clemson, you look at Alabama, you look at Georgia and Oklahoma, pretty much fixtures in the postseason right now, and it's not all that hard to figure out when you start at the quarterback position. Well, Chris, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on the program. Always a wealth of knowledge. This kind of turned into a quarterback day, but hey, why not? It's the most popular position on the field. Have a great weekend. We look forward to catching up again real soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.